The balance breakdown is back for UFC 305 from Perth, Australia. Dricus du Plessis defended his middleweight title against Israel Adesanya, the former champ, in a very entertaining main event on the night. Very, very back and forth fight. Very excited to talk about it with my man who is back from, we're both back from our vacation. Harry Powell, the walking Louvre, the COVID king. I don't know what we can call you today, Harry. You're a little bit under the weather. You're still popping on here. You're back from New York. You have more art on your body. Fair play to you, good sir. I return as a married man. Lots of changes over the last couple of weeks. Thanks to Graham, Spencer, and yourself for stepping in when I was away, keeping the show on the road. It's good to be back with you, good sir. And I'm excited to talk about this night, this card that went down last Saturday night.
Yeah, phenomenal. That main card, some of the fights on that main card were absolutely brilliant. Main event was crazy. You can probably hear from my voice, as Ian's already said, I'm a little bit poorly, but we're grand here. Just my brain's moving slow, but that's not really anything new. Other than that, we're good to go, ready to talk some fights, sir.
Anything could happen. Anything could be said here today. I'm a little bit jet lagged myself, so but I think once we get going, we'll get through these fights fairly all right. Starting off with the main event, Harry. Let's get straight into it here. Dricus du Plessis, Israel Adesanya. Before this fight, and I kind of tweeted out last week, and we were making our picks at the start of the week. I was going for Dricus. When the deadline came for us to put our final picks, the press conference hadn't really happened yet or anything like that. I had changed my mind to Israel Adesanya with no great confidence. After that press conference for me, though, that was my kind of final decision on who I thought was going to win this fight was going to be Dricus du Plessis. And we don't have to go into it. I think Sean and Graham did a good job in talking about the mind games and the build up to this fight, but it was quite unusual to see Israel Adesanya, lose that mental warfare before a fight, because he's normally so strong in that department. But Dricus got to him, and Dricus kind of played him at his own game. Whether maybe we can talk about, in our opinions, whether it affected Israel too much in the fight itself. I'm not too sure. I think it's hard to say. I think there might be a couple of other kind of things that may have gotten in his way. One major factor is that motivation for me to remain at the top. It's not easy to do. He would have been the first ever person to retain the middleweight title 3 times. I think Randy Couture retained the heavyweight title 3 times, and I think he's the only person that has gotten back there to do that. Maybe that's wrong, but I think I heard somebody saying that on Twitter there last week. But the big story of this fight is Dricus du Plessis keeps proving the doubters wrong, Harry. He keeps going out there and performing, not what would not seem at an elite level, but he gets elite level results, and that's what it's all about at the end of the day, really, isn't it?
Kind of. I mean, look, at the end of the day, right, we've talked about this before, and we'll talk about it again, is it's like the A1 goal is to win. It doesn't fucking matter how you win. The goal is to win. And especially when you are a world champion, right? If you walk in with the belt and you walk out with the belt, it does not fucking matter how you walk out with it. Just make sure you walk out with it, right? Both from a sort of a divisional perspective, from a financial perspective, from a longevity perspective, from a legacy perspective. If you go out and defend your title, great stuff. Mission accomplished. For Dricus, I didn't really watch much of the pre-fight press conferences. I saw all the memes about Izzy crying. I saw the stuff about, Dricus talking about his socioeconomic status and all this sort of stuff. But in the fight itself, maybe we'll go round by round, right? But like round one was close. Round two, I thought was close again. Round three was not close, and round four began not close either, and then eventually became really, really not close because Israel Adesanya loses, right? But there were a couple of things that I noticed in this specific matchup, and that was that whilst from a scoring perspective, these rounds were close, Israel for the most part was in complete control of the fight.
Mhm.
And until the grappling exchanges occurred, and even in the grappling exchanges, for the most part, Israel did quite well, much better than in the Alex Bahia fights, and much better, I think, than most people would have expected him to do. But the footwork was all Israel Adesanya. The feints were all Israel Adesanya. The forward pressure, for the most part, was all Israel Adesanya until a couple of moments when, he got clipped and he got hurt and whatever. But people have been saying and criticizing Israel that there's not enough output, there's not enough sort of intention, there's not enough viciousness, there's not enough willingness to try and finish the fight, there's not enough, there's not enough these sort of elements, right? But I thought from moment one, Israel went out there and was looking to chip away at Dricus du Plessis with the intention of slowing him down and finishing him late. And I think in another universe, the body work that he put in, the leg kicks that he put in, and the damage that he was putting on Dricus du Plessis, there's every chance in the world that totals up in round 5 to a very, very either demonstrable unanimous decision win or a finish. Now, what happens, right? And props to Dricus du Plessis for having the kryptonite for so many people in this division. And I think for me, that kryptonite is unbelievable raw athleticism and power, right? Durability, and an ability to find a second and third win. He's got a bit of that Dustin Poirier about him. You know what I mean? They're like, first round, you're like, oh my God, he's fucking gassed. Oh my God, he's got 4 more rounds. He can't do this. And then he comes out middle of round 2 and he's like, I'm grand now. And you're like, okay, sure, no problem. And then round 3 comes and you're like, oh my God, he's gassed again. Oh my God, this fight's finished. It's finished. And he comes out in round 4 and is absolutely fine. So all of those sort of 3 things, the technical elements we can get to, right? We can dissect those and how unorthodox they are, and how you might not coach a fighter to fight like that or look like that or throw like that, but it works for him, right? He clipped Adesanya a number of times, hurt him a number of times, specifically at the end of the fight, right? So there are things to digest for sure.
Absolutely, there are things to digest. You mentioned a couple of things as well, and that's one thing I want to touch on. It was Israel's want to attack in this fight, but I think that also is drawn out of him through the way Dricus wanted to approach this fight and move forward, and wasn't afraid to go on the attack, wasn't afraid to get in. He was a little bit stifled, I think, maybe early days in round 1. He kind of landed a couple of, he was looking for that lead left high kick, I believe, at times, which was landing on the arms more so, I think, than anything else. I scored the first round for it, which was a very, very close first round for Israel Adesanya.
I agree.
And Sean talked about impact on the big podcast, and I definitely agree. That the shots that Dricus was throwing in round 1 were impactful, but they weren't all landing cleanly. And I think the cleaner of the work was coming from Israel Adesanya. And he was landing with some impact at times, but all in all, when I accumulated the round together, and very, very hard round to score, I leaned into what work Israel did in round 1 with the body work, landed a nice knee up the middle, and a couple of nice jabs and calf kicks as well. Now, don't definitely someone coming to me and say, no, I think Dricus did this, and this well, and that's why I gave it to him. I think it's just that close of a round that you can't argue too much against it. But I think that kind of set the bar for what Israel Adesanya was trying to do, Harry, for the duration of this fight. It was go on the attack, work the body, take Dricus out of his rhythm, and he was hoping that would bank into the later rounds, which, like you said, it seemed at stages that it was working for him. But as you said, Dricus just kept coming back and coming back. He had those second wind, the third wind, and it was unreal. Let's get into the nitty gritty from your perspective, from an analytical point of view, and what you've seen in round 1, Harry, and then we'll work our way through this fight.
Sure. So in round 1, the reason why I scored it for Israel, and I know that defense doesn't score, right? But Israel has an amazing ability at taking his head so far away as the trajectory of the shot comes in, that when the shot lands, it lands like really at the end of its range, which is generally where it's the weakest, right? Like you see really, really high level boxers, they might get hit, they might get clipped, but they're getting clipped as the punch is really at its absolute extension of the shoulder, and it's kind of lost a lot of its velocity. So
You call it turning with the punch. You know what I mean? If you're getting hit with a left hook, you're turning your head to your left shoulder, and that's it. You're taking the ferocity in, rather than when we say when you run into a punch, it increases the impact of that shot as well. But you can do that vice versa, as you've been explaining there.
100%. So like I thought Israel did a good job, and Dricus absolutely landed impactfully. I just thought that the impact was minimized by the work of Israel Adesanya defensively. And then when you clock up the low kicks, when you clock up the body teeps, when you clock up the rib roasters, when you clock up the nice jabs, couple of elbows, knee up the middle, I thought it was close. Don't get me wrong. And like you say, I have absolutely no issue with Dricus du Plessis being scored that round. I personally scored it for Israel Adesanya. The second round, round opens with a really nice spinning back kick from Dricus du Plessis. Dricus then just starts wrestling. And I think this was a perfect technical adjustment for Dricus, where, oh yeah, we're going to allow him to do some striking in round one. That's fine, because we know that we have this explosive entrance to grappling whenever we need it, right? Whenever we need it, it's there. And he used it perfectly in rounds two. Did a good job to grab the back. Didn't control the back amazingly well. And I think one of the reasons one of the things that Dricus really could focus on is he's such a sort of tight and large human being that there's an element of just raw bastardry to him when he's grabbing you.
Jimmy Smith would call him a fire hydrant, I think, wouldn't he?
Yeah, he would. Yeah, he absolutely would. Right. There is the Francisco Trinaldo's about him, right? Where when he gets hold of you, you're like, oh my fucking God, he's got hold of me. But if you take a moment to have a think, the technical elements, the sort of mechanical tightnesses aren't necessarily there, right? It's a lot of just brute strength and brute power. And Israel, I think, understood that. And Dricus didn't control the back position well enough and was more focused on just trying to get chokes, that Israel was able to turn out really, really well, get on top, and looked good in doing so. And I think that was a massive moment both for Dricus, because he realizes I can take this guy down and I can control him, I can get to dominant position. But it was also a big, big, big thing for Israel to be like, okay, he's taken me down, but I've also escaped a dominant position and I've gotten back up. Right?
Yes, I was very impressed with that as well, Harry, because he remained calm and composed in a scenario where he wasn't the most dominant fighter, or nor would he have felt confident from being. But he did all the simple things correctly there. Didn't panic. He did everything the opposite, really, than what he did for the end sequence of the fight, really. And I think that's what made the end sequence of the fight so surprising, was Israel's ability in the grappling exchanges to remain safe, to not panic, to sometimes accept that bad position. You know, what a lot of fighters will do, if they get taken down, if they don't want to be taken down, what is, oh shit, I have to get back up to my feet. Rather than just take a couple of seconds to yourself, accept the position, and then rather than trying to explode and fail and just draining your gas tank, just keep cool, calm, and composed and allow the moment to come to you. And I think that's what Israel did excellently well in round two. And we'll obviously talk about rounds 3 and rounds 4 in just a minute.
For sure. So although Izzy did get back up, I thought Dricus did, and did some damage on the feet, sorry. I thought Dricus did enough to take the round. He landed some good shots on the bottom. The choke attempts were, whilst, not super high scoring, there were some jaw cranks. He made him defend himself. Like, these were offensive movements that I scored. Round 3, Israel just
for the record, I would have scored round. I kind of read it exactly as how you read it as well. The work from Dricus round 2. So I had it 19-19 going into round 3.
Cool, agree. I gave round 3 for Israel Adesanya. I thought this is where he really started to take over and started flowing. The shots really started to land. The jabs were like a stream of water. The low kicks were great. I really loved the rib roasters. The way he would set them up was beautiful. He'd go jab. He'd then feint to the outside. Dricus would either lift the leg up, and as the leg came back down, the first rib shot came in, and immediately the second rib shot came in. He would feint rib, go uppercut. That was beautiful. There was like your quintessential Israel Adesanya striking performance is what we saw in rounds 3. And, Dricus is so tough that Israel did not expect some of the shots to come back that did come back in the moments that they did come back. And he had to respect those shots as well. But there was a really, really pivotal moment to me again in 3. And that was Dricus is tired. He shoots. And Izzy sprawls on it perfectly, like a perfect sprawl at an angle, angled away, a dominant hip down, hand on the back of the head, pushes him away, gets back up. And I was like, oh, that's dope.
Yeah,
Like that's
you
massive.
thought that was like for me, and I'd imagine you thought the same as well. It was at that moment for me, I was thinking we're seeing a real big momentum shift into this fight. Obviously Israel, who I scored round one for, but he wouldn't have known it was too close. I think round two was close, but I think Izzy would probably have been more comfortable in accepting that he might not have won that round. He had to go out there and win round three, and he fought that way in round three. And it was at that time when we seen the sprawl, when we seen the body shots. I felt this is the big momentum shift that we have seen in other Israel Adesanya fights that he is going to build upon going in for the remainder of this fight.
Yeah, it was the thing that we were screaming out for in the Strickland fight, was that attempted momentum shift. It was the thing, when we watched the fight against Paulo Costa and he was just piecing him up, just literally picking him apart. That was what round three was to me. Like it was magic, like absolutely magic. And Dricus had his moments for sure, but Israel looked just unbelievable. And then the fourth round, the first sort of minute 10, Israel was beating the fuck out of Dricus again, just beating his body up. Really, really nice takedown defense. Dricus bails to his back after the body shots, and Mark Goddard's like, "You need to get up right fucking now," because he sort of ambled up to a knee, and Israel's looking at Mark like, "Is he done, or are we doing this? Like, what's going on?" Mark calls him to his feet. Lovely, just a beautifully clean minute and a half. Then there's the second momentum shift, right? Izzy hurts Dricus, and then something happens. I think it's a left hook from Dricus. It was really hard. Everything sort of happened kind of so fast, and it all kind of happened in and of itself. Like Dricus seemed hurt. He stumbles his way over. He manages to clip Izzy. Izzy points to the ground for some fucking reason, and then immediately turns his back. And I don't know what's going on. If I'm really honest, I do not know what's going on. Like we've seen Israel hurt before. I
Yeah,
don't know whether. Go on.
I think that we've seen, and you said we've seen Israel hurt before, but Israel gets hurt very well. If you ask me, his legs are so strong,
Yeah.
and they always remain so strong. We saw that in the Alex Pereira fight as well,
Yeah.
when Pereira finished him in the middleweight, that his legs were strong, but it was the upper half of his body that didn't seem to be in control. And that's unusual for us as people who are watching a lot of fights. And it's quite the opposite that does happen, is that we normally see a lot of fighters' legs go, where they're unsteady and they do the wobble or they do the stanky leg or whatnot. But with Israel, it's very difficult to tell because he doesn't portray how hurt he is. He's very good at masking how hurt he is in certain terms and not falling over the place. But it's the little, from probably watching him, it's the mannerisms. The arms go down. He starts looking away. He starts looking down at the canvas. That those were the kind of signs that we were seeing there. And it's very hard, Harry, to tell in that scenario, is he hurt or is he tired? And I think there can be a bit of combination of both in this case for Israel.
Maybe. I mean, the thing that struck me immediately is you can feel the change in the air, right? Like there's a change in the air that happens. And I wonder whether Israel re-envisioned the Alex Pereira fight where he was hurt and tired and he put himself against the fence and he waits for him to wade in and then he cracks him with a big shot. But for some reason, he turns his back and there's just Dricus du Plessis is a shark in the water, right? When it comes to this sort of stuff, it's a shark in the water, and he just bombs on him from the top, right? Bombs on him with his back turned, manages to somehow stumble into them both sort of falling over, like almost theatrically falling over, jumps on his back, locks up a jaw crank, and Israel's forced to tap. I mean, there's nothing pretty there, right? There's nothing beautiful. I'm certainly not gonna go to a grappling class and be like, right, lads, this is what we're gonna do today, right? I'm not replicating this ever. But I'm just sort of afterwards, I was just like, I'm just so kind of blown away by the change and the speed
It was quick.
of it.
Yeah, it was quick. I was like,
Crazy.
I was looking at it and I was the same as you. I was scratching my head and was like, what's happened there? Like
What's happened
that's
there?
that's like that's a tremendous shift in momentum. Like when we were not talking about being an even fight and having a shift of momentum for Dricus du Plessis. We're talking about Izzy having the better of the shift of momentum, and then it's slowly not slowly, just quickly just turning around. The next thing Israel is tapping out. It, the mental side of things, I think, we were getting into a stage of the fight where it was like who wanted it more, in terms of, Dricus kept coming back. Like, I think Dricus was given those kind of opportunities that Israel was presented in round 4, but he refused to give up. He did get back up to his feet, and he did continue moving forward and fighting. And I think with Israel there, he made an unconscious decision before that finish to turn his back on his opponent. And type of body language tells you that he doesn't want to be in there anymore. And subsequently, the back was taken, the choke was locked in, and the tap came relatively quick after that. Could he have done anything better in your opinion? Obviously, you don't want to be turning your back on your opponent, but in terms of defending the choke, he said he made a mistake. He needs to make a minor correction. What mistake, in your opinion, did Israel make in that finishing sequence to find himself choked out? I don't think it really was a mistake. I just think, with all due respect to Israel Adesanya, he made a personal decision with himself to say that this is not my night, and I find myself in a really difficult situation here, and that's it. It's over,
I don't know. I don't know if I can agree. Like there was one moment, I've written it in my notes that I just quickly reviewed the notes. Like there was a moment when Izzy was resetting and Dricus caught him with a shot just above the ear, a right hook just above the ear. And like, those ones where the
equilibrium
equilibrium's a bit gone, right? There was a moment there where he was sort of wobbled a touch, and then I don't know whether that was the beginning of the end, where he never really got his feet back underneath him or his head sort of straight again. And then Dricus is coming, and the whole thing sort of comes in, and maybe Israel thinks he has more space, but he's actually right next to against the fence, and he turns and he thought he could just run and reset out, but he couldn't. And then the whole thing, blah, 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 blah. In terms of actual defending, like there was just no hand fighting at all.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like the moment that Izzy went to a 4-point, Dricus had already started locking up the finish, and Israel didn't bail to his back quick enough, didn't try and rotate inside the choke quick enough, didn't try and peel any hooks, didn't try and build any height, didn't try and fight the hands. Like, and I get it.
He found himself in a turtle position for 5 seconds too, which you just simply can't do
you can't, no.
in any type of mixed martial arts, to be honest, whether it's high level or whether, what level you're fighting at. You just can't do that. When both of your arms are down on the mat with both your knees on the mat in that turtle position, your neck is widely exposed, and Dricus jumped on it straight away.
Yeah, for sure. And I just I'd love to know the actual answer. Like, yeah. I wonder whether, I'm not sure it is I'm just going to make a decision here. I don't know, because he was in the driving seat, like round 3 and round 4 until it all fell off. He was in a really, really good spot. He looked good. He looked calm. He looked flowy. He didn't look like he was super gassed or super tired. Like, obviously he's tired. He's expending a lot of energy, etc., etc. But he didn't look like he was running on fumes or anything. It looked like the rest of the 4th and the 5th, he was going to be good to go. But man, it was just such a crazy fall off. And the thing that's insane to me about it is it's like you've got now this weird position where he looked great for so much of the fight, and then that crazy fall off, and obviously all the garbage online about he's done, he's washed, whatever, all that's obviously shite. But like, what do you do now if you're Israel Adesanya? Because if there is something mentally, and he decided to check out and he decided to not do it, and he decided like, oh, tonight maybe isn't my night, what do we do now? He's beaten everyone. There's no one else left to beat other than Dricus, right? There's no need necessarily to go and do the Alex Pereira fight again. We've kind of seen that. I think Alex Pereira has kind of transcended that fight now.
I honestly think that he does. I don't think that Israel Adesanya wants that fight with Alex Pereira at 205. I think it's just a nightmare fight for him. Like, I mean, to say that he's fallen off, I don't think you can say I think he fell off in the fight. I think, I seen some people say maybe he's lost a little bit of pop in these punches, but I don't think he has. I think it's more so down to the fact that Dricus du Plessis is an absolute dog that can just take anything. Like those body shots that Israel was landing, man, I could feel them myself. It was like, so they were nasty, and Dricus, he just kept going and going. With Israel right now, he is in a very, very unusual position, but a position he's never been in before. He's never lost 2 fights in mixed martial arts in a row since he started. He's never been submitted. So he has a couple of questions to ask himself, but he can take some solace from the fact that he was looking damn good at stages in that fight as well, and it was a fall off. Not as drastic as the Alex Bahia loss, but I would say more drastic than the Alex Bahia loss. I think he kind of had a mini drop off in the Alex Bahia fight when he was stopped in the 5th round as well. But it's going to be a crazy situation. Do we see him fighting lower level competition in the middleweight division? Does he have that? Does he have the want to do that anymore? No, those are the questions that we can't answer. The only one, Israel answered them straight away after a fight saying he'll be back. So I guess we got to take his word for it now. But it's going to be a tough hole. You're talking probably another 2 fights at least before he gets back into championship contention. And at that stage, what is he going to be? 38 maybe? And time is a ticking for the big man, and it'll be interesting to see. But I think we have to give a lot of level of credit to Dricus du Plessis for going in there. Look, he has picked up wins now over Robert Whittaker, also Sean Strickland, and Israel Adesanya as well. And obviously has done some great work outside the UFC and coming back and picking up wins over the likes of Roberto Soldic and stuff like that. So he is the true middleweight king. There can be no doubt about it now. I mean, I didn't really doubt him coming in. I obviously look at the Strickland fight was close, but I really like Dricus du Plessis. I don't care. I like the way he carries himself. I like his shit talk. He's a wild man when he's in there. He's not, the most aesthetically pleasing fighter that you're going to see, but he's very, very effective at what he does. And we have to respect that, Harry.
Look, I saw a tweet online too saying, like, if you told me that the next middleweight champion had stoppage wins over Robert Whittaker and Israel Adesanya, you'd expect a lean, mean, technical, stylish, pound for pound, great. Instead, we have Dricus du Plessis. And like Sean said something about how this is good for MMA, right? That like it shows you that the raw bastardry still has a place, and that there is an element of the game is not always one size fits all, right? And I do think there's certainly an element to you're going to have anomalies, and MMA is ripe for anomalies, right? Now, somebody is going to fix that anomaly one day. Right, one day there will be a fighter that comes along and beats Dricus du Plessis. It's impossible to think otherwise, right? Like, you don't get out of this sport unscathed unless you're Khabib Nurmagomedov, right? And even he lost a fight, just didn't lose it professionally. And there's an element with Dricus where it seems so easy on paper to beat him. You just do what Israel did in the 3rd and portions of the 4th, right? But what happens when he does land that big left hook and you have to turn your back and he jumps on your back and breaks your jaw by pulling his forearm through it? What are you going to do? What are you going to do? What are you going to do when you throw the kitchen sink at him and he brings 2 more kitchen sinks and says, what more have you got? Like, I own B&Q, get out of my shop. Like, what do you know? Like, there's just something to having those innate human qualities that are so anomalous to most fighters at elite levels in mixed martial arts. And I think we should embrace him, right? I think we should celebrate him while we have him, because, with all champions, almost all champions are short-lived, right? You don't get many Mighty Mouses. You don't get many John Joneses. You don't get many Israel Adesanyas, really, right? So we should enjoy him while he's here. And let's fucking line him up for him. You know what I mean? Yeah. Let's just fucking line him up.
Sean Strickland rematch is what they're hoping for Dricus du Plessis. I mean, it makes sense. They had a close fight. I'm not too interested in that. I'd be, I mean, if Khamzat maybe gets a win over Robert Whittaker, maybe you could throw him in there. But I mean, I can't even get excited. Yeah, I can't. That's what I'm going to say. I can't even get excited about Khamzat now, because he just has, he's pulling out of fights left, right, and center. I think a more interesting question, Harry, is real quick before we wrap up this fight is who next for Israel?
It's tough. It's tough. I mean, look, can you do let's say Caio Borralho beats Jared Cannonier in a week. Can you do a Caio Borralho? Can you do a Brendan Allen if he gets a big win? Can you do insert name? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, a bit of fresh meat, I think, for
right.
Israel. I think
If Imavov gets a couple of big more wins, can you chuck him in there?
Imavov might be the guy. You know, I'm not sure if he is matched up or anything right now.
It also depends. It does depend how much time Izzy wants off, right? Like he did take a little bit of damage in that fight, not from the chokes or anything, but from some of the shots and stuff. We know that camp is always hard for Israel Adesanya. I'm not sure that we see him for the rest of the year. Maybe we do, right? Maybe we do, but I'd like it if we did, obviously. And now he's a champion; it's far easier to book him. But I'd be very interested to see what happens with Israel. If it's true that Conor is fighting in December, don't be shocked to see Israel on a December card as like a co-main or a whatever against somebody.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with that as well. Moving on to the co-main event, Kai Kara-France, Steve Erceg in the flyweight division. A fight I was really, really looking forward to, and a fight that was very, very exciting for as long as it lasted. And Kai Kara-France obviously pulled off the win inside round one. Shocked the masses, really. Wasn't really that fancy by a lot of people. Look, this is based off the fact that Steve Erceg came within a concert really of winning the flyweight title against Alejandro Pantoja only a couple of months back. I thought, me personally, ahead of this fight, I thought Erceg would have had the technical advantages coming into this fight to stay away from the power of Kai Kara-France and get off his own shots en route to a decision win. That would have been my official prediction before the fight. But it was Kai Kara-France that came in here, Harry, found his range from a very early stage in the fight, and also, just landed, hurt Erceg, jumped on him, didn't let him recover, and got the TKO win. What were your thoughts on this fight?
So it went exactly the opposite way to how I imagined. And in hindsight, I wish I had thought more about how quickly Steve Erceg had turned around from an absolute fucking war with Alexandre Pantoja, because in that fight, you were absolutely right. I think the professional term was used, right? He was within a concert of winning the title, right? And I think you go in against Kai Kara-France, and we know what we're getting with Kai Kara-France, right? You're getting speed, agility, and you're getting really good L-shaped footwork. You're getting switch hitting, but generally, you're not getting demonstrable power. You're not getting crazy output. You're not getting mad grappling scrambles. You're not getting, these sorts of things. You're getting an elite level striker, but I thought Steve Erceg was going to have enough to be able to deter all of those things. We saw how crisp, how clean the striking was. We saw how hard he can hit. We saw how durable he can be. And we saw the grappling scrambles, right? So when I saw the first couple of seconds come in, and Steve Erceg couldn't quite get his feet right, couldn't quite get his head off the center line, how quick Kai Kara-France looked in comparison to Erceg, I was like, oh, this could be dangerous, right? Like, this could be dangerous. And then there was a couple of momentum shifts. Erceg did a good job of landing a jab here now and again. He did a good job of timing the body jabs and the body straights of Kai Kara-France and landed some really nice shovel uppercuts. So the brain was still there. The brain was still working, right? But there was a significant speed and power difference when it came to it. And the finishing sequence was absolutely beautiful. Like Kai Kara-France just lined him up gorgeously, set him up for the overhand right, feinted with it, came with the overhand left via a switch hit, and just put him on his back. And I thought we were done immediately because he hit the canvas rigid. But
he almost woke himself up really when he hit the canvas.
I'd say so. Managed to get to a wrestle up, got to said wrestle up. Kai Kara-France, as you said, stayed on him, blood in the water. Didn't force the position, didn't force the shot, just bided his time, knew his man was on skates, knew he had loads of time, and just executed absolutely perfectly. Like I wrote in the spotlight about perseverance, and I thought that this was a really good showing of that. Kai Kara-France coming off the back of 2 losses, massive injuries, concussion pullouts, this, that, and the next thing. Massive road blockers in your career, especially at the age he is, especially at sort of the divisional. He's hanging on to that like upper echelon of the division by an absolute fucking shoestring, because there are lads coming at 125 to take that spot. And if he loses this to Steve Erceg, if he doesn't fight with Steve Erceg or enter person at this show, he loses that divisional ranking. It's gone, right? And then it's an absolute uphill battle to get it back. And he comes out and he performs the way he performs. First round stoppage against the guy who did that well against the champ just recently is a massive feather in his cap. And don't be shocked if that guy that was looking at dumping down the division by a number of ways now gets the next title shot. Don't be shocked.
Yeah, I wouldn't be shocked whatsoever. I think, my takeaways from the fight, what surprised me, and I would assume, Harry, what surprised Steve Erceg in this fight was, it was actually Kai Kara France that was winning the footwork battle from the very, very early stages of this fight, and also found his range and was landing shots, whenever he wanted to, against a guy in Steve Erceg who has been known not to be getting hit as easy as he was getting hit. And it was that switch overhand left that was absolutely beautiful. And hindsight is a great thing. And if we could say anything in criticism of Steve Erceg, is that sometimes he does exit the pocket standing a little bit too up straight. And I think Kai Kara France read that perfectly. And that was, the shot that really, hurt Erceg and ended up getting the win for Kai Kara France.
Unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. Like I was so surprised and happily surprised for Kai Kara France in this one. Don't get me wrong, Erceg is still an elite fighter. I think there is we have to remember his own trajectory in this too, right? Comes in, massive debut, looks absolutely phenomenal in said debut, takes a rocket ship to the title. You don't really have time to bed in and understand the level that you're competing at, right? On a regional promotion, Steve Erceg could probably turn around 3 months, 4 months after a really tough fight and get right back in there and go do the same thing over and over again. You know what I mean? Because
it was only in June last year. I was at the UFC event in Vancouver where he made his debut against David Dvorak. That was only last year. Right. And then you pick up a couple of wins, you get thrust into a title shot, and then with your performance, you're up there with the upper echelons of the division. I mean, the flyweight division and a lot of divisions can come at you very fast. And just because, Erceg didn't have his night on Saturday night, I would agree with you 100% that he's by no means out of the title run. And, he can go in, he's going to pick up a couple of wins. I wouldn't be surprised to see him back up in title contention in 2 to 3 fights, to be honest.
Yeah, 100%. I just think there's sort of an acclimatization period that generally happens, right? Everyone sort of has this rough trajectory where you come in, a couple of fights at a low level, medium tier fights, early rankings, middle rankings, high rankings, title shot. Steve Erceg went middle divisional side, middle of the divisional pack, ranking, title shot. Like there's such an ascent there that you don't know how much time you should take off. You don't know what the level really is like until you face it. And then you fight Pantoja, short notice in terms of, he hasn't had that many fights in the UFC, gets the call, puts the training camp in, first title shot in the UFC, you're riding like on every single cloud nine possible. You go in there, you put your body on the line, really, really tough fight, come out just a loser. And then they're like, Kai Kara France, and you're like, fucking absolutely, roughly hometown, give me that cunt right now, let me go and get back to that title. But you forget that Kai Kara France is the elite of the elite as well. You know what I mean? Like it's a
guy who's been, like you said, who has been, even though it has been by a thread, he's been up there for quite some time. And, fair play to him. I was happy to see him get the win. Hopefully just throw him into that title shot now. Why not? Just throw him in there and see what happens. Let's have some fun. Moving on, Dan Hooker versus Mateusz Gamrot. Really, really interesting fight. This one, really close fight. I enjoyed it for the duration of it. A split decision. Dan Hooker took home the win as the underdog. It came as a big surprise to everybody. Very curious to hear your thoughts on this fight, and obviously look at we'll chat a little bit about the scoring of this one as well. I tended to agree with the decision, to be honest. In the end, I think Dan Hooker did do enough, even though it was very, very close. We saw a couple of extra wrinkles in Mateusz Gamrot's game. We needed to see more action with him when he had his opponents back on the canvas. We did see that. His boxing looked good in stages, but ultimately his dependence on that takedown was far too much, in my opinion, and did cost him this fight when, when he was unable to get the takedown, it didn't seem that he was confident enough to remain standing with Dan Hooker when Dan Hooker wanted to apply that pressure. I think he started strong, but slowly wilted on the feet. And ultimately, in my opinion, I think that cost him the fight overall.
Yeah, so I had the fight 29-28. I scored the first round for Mateusz Gamrot, and then the second and third rounds for Dan Hooker. I think for me, I'll go to the same point, but kind of a slightly different way. I think the reliance on the takedown came because Dan Hooker hurt Gamrot so badly in the first, and Gamrot never actually really fully recovered, right? Every time that Dan would initiate any striking exchanges, he was generally getting the better of the exchanges. He was generally landing the last couple of shots in the exchanges. When Gamrot then was interested in the grappling, Dan got taken down sometimes, right? But again, you mentioned bided his time. If he got to a poor position, if not, he was scrambling, he was taking whizzes, he was landing Conor McGregor, Cain Velasquez elbows, he was Travis Brown elbows, sorry. He was landing damage all the time, like all the time. Right? Whether he was in a bad spot, good spot, indifferent spot, he was landing damage over and over and over and over and over again. And I think that that's exhausting. I think Gamrot also felt that Hooker in his hometown is a guy that you absolutely have to kill him. You have to kill him. You have to kill him. And he couldn't. Right? He gave his absolute best to kill him in that moment when he hurt him and was landing all those hellacious shots and elbows from the top in the first round. And Hooker said, yeah, that's grand. I'm going to get back up now. Now I'm going to hurt you. And there's a moment, I think, where the zombie comes out, right? The zombie in Dan Hooker comes out. And if you cannot kill him, he's going to keep coming forward. And Gamrot, I think, didn't have the mentality to kill him on Saturday night. He looked great. It was a close fight. Some of the takedown entries were beautiful. Some of the crisp striking, as you said, was beautiful. Some really nice volume work on Gamrot, some toughness on Gamrot. I think he had his jaw severely, severely wobbled in round 2 and still managed to finish the fight. So I was very impressed with Gamrot's durability and toughness, but there's a difference between surviving and then being in that sort of a situation of thriving. And that's exactly what Dan Hooker did on Saturday night. That was, people mentioned Dan Hooker, and I was going to write the spotlight on Dan Hooker, frankly, because, he's a dying breed of fighter. But
there would have been an argument to say that he might, like a lot of people would have thought that he didn't have a performance like that left in him after having so many of those performances in his career so far. And, from a scoring perspective, in my opinion, I agree with you. Gamrot round 1, Hooker round 2, and Hooker round 3. And I based the Hooker round 3 nearly off the last 15 seconds of the fight. I think I tweeted out as well. That's how close that this fight was. There was a great moment in round 2 when Dan Hooker got back to the stool, cuts under his left eye, cuts above and below his right eye. He's laughing at his corner saying, I fucking love this, guys. And I mean, that's who Dan Hooker is. If you can't respect that, I mean, I don't know what you're looking for inside of there. It's like, Dan Hooker calling his shots after the fight is exactly what he deserved to do. He always, I tweeted out, he always leaves everything in there, and you have to respect him for that. And his reward is he's back up there in the top 5 or 6, and he's going to be in there with some interesting fights. So it'll be interesting. What about maybe a Dan Hooker versus Dustin Poirier rematch, perhaps? That might be interesting. I don't know. Obviously, look at Dustin Poirier says he says one more. Harry is blowing his cheeks out. He doesn't want to see Dusty P back in there again, I'm sure. But if Dustin Poirier did want one more, I think Dan Hooker might be the perfect guy for him. And it'd be interesting to see. What do you think for Dan?
So I think for Dan, like you've got to do the Drew Dober type of experience now, where Dan says, "I'd like exciting fights, please." And you say,
but can you do Drew Dober, man? He's like,
no,
Gamrot was ranked number 5 in the lightweight.
No, that's not. I don't mean.
Sorry.
What I mean is, Dan Hooker wants. Drew Dober says, "I only want to be in exciting fights now. I don't want to. Or you can give me 5 names. I'm going to pick the guy that I think will give me the most exciting fight." that's what Dan Hooker needs to do now, right? Like, regardless of the ranking or whatever, because what I'm saying is he's not going to win a title. He's not going to challenge for a title. He's not going to get to a top 3 ranking. He is a fighter who is making and has made the absolute most of the physical capabilities that he has. And he has made technical improvements. He has. But we are at a situation now where, what is he, 32 or 33, whatever it is, that the last 2 to 3 years of his UFC run, just let him fight fun fights. I don't necessarily think I need to see fun fights against Dustin Poirier, but what about Benoit Saint-Denis?
Yeah, I like it. I like that fight. If Benoit Saint-Denis comes past he's fighting in France, I believe, isn't he? Who's he fighting? I can't remember off the top of my head.
We'll find
Okay,
out.
it doesn't matter any which way. Let's move on to the next one, and that was a heavyweight fight between Jairzinho Rosenstruik and Tai Tuivasa. Who's it? Moicano. It's Moicano, yeah, 100%. Rosenstruik versus Tuavasa, Harry. I think personally an easy fight to analyze. Tai Tuivasa went out there and tried to fight a technical stand-up striker with a striking battle with a more apt technical striker in Jairzinho Rosenstruik, and it just did not work out for him whatsoever.
No, bless him. He's trying, isn't he? Like, he's desperately trying to do the fighting thing seriously and take it properly. But the answer in this fight would have been 17 pints deep in the car park, Tai Tuivasa. Like, that's what we needed.
Yeah, 100%.
And he went out and he tried to jab and front kick and move his head and do the things. And he just didn't do well. Like, it's just, if you go into a kickboxing match with a kickboxer, a storied kickboxer at that, it's going to be tough for you. Like, it's going to be tough. And you do need to push Jairzinho back. You do need to make him wary to throw. You do need to upset his rhythm a little bit. And Tai said, cool, I tell you what, you set the rhythm and I'm going to try and follow you with the rhythm and just hit you a little bit harder. And he just didn't, right? Like, he just didn't. And it's a shame. Because you can tell that he desperately tried to add the technical elements, but sometimes you just have to stick to what's good,
Got to stick to your fucking nickname is what I say. Bam Bam. You need to go in there with a bit of Bam Bam, and I don't know. Sometimes I have crazy picks. I did pick Tuivasa by round 1, but I think, subconsciously I was thinking that, I don't know what I was thinking there, Harry. What is going on? I was even saying the same to Sean. I was like, fucking hell, sometimes I'm out there with the way I think. But I think in my defense, the way I was thinking is that, like, Tuivasa going out there, guns ablazing early, trying to storm down Rosenstruik, landing a shot, getting him out of there, having his moment at home, breaking the losing streak. I was living in a bit of a fantasy land. It didn't happen that way, but that was the way he should have tried to get it done. He didn't. Rosenstruik fought excellently well, I thought. I mean, instead disciplined. I mean, I think it's easy to fight the way he fought against a guy who's willing to fight like Tai Tuivasa, but I think, you have to remain disciplined because Tai Tuivasa still does have that killer shot in there. And, Rosenstruik moves on up the division. Tai Tuivasa is in a difficult enough old situation there now in the height of a long losing streak. That's 5 in a row now for Tuivasa. I don't think he'll get his marching orders. I think he's too much of a personality to get that, but they're going to have to put him in there against somebody, that
Waldo Cortez Acosta or something.
Yeah, someone like that, or your man Roberto de Spain, or whatever his name is, someone like that. Get an old win or two under the belt again for Tuivasa, because I think Graham mentioned it on the big podcast, and I kind of agree with him, is that Tuivasa is kind of, his skill set seems to be declining in some regards. I think it's a mixture of that and just him kind of fighting like a fighter that he's not, in trying to be technical rather than he needs to get a few points to him, go out into the car park, like you said, and start throwing heavy leather. Moving on into the 170-pound division, opening up the main card, Carlos Prates took home a second round knockout over the Li Jiangliang very impressive performance here from the Brazilian, a breakout performance. And this is exactly what the UFC were hoping for, I think, in matching this fight. But it was a big test for Prates because the Leech had never been knocked out before in his career. And he almost, made up for that in this fight alone, getting dropped multiple times before getting finished. Really impressive performance from Prates here. And another player that will move into close to the rankings, I would imagine, if he's not in there already.
Straight shots beat hooks. The end. Like, Prates is just like, oh, you want to stand in a phone booth and throw massive haymakers? That's fine. I'll stand here with you, but I'm going to hit you from over here and you're going to miss everything. Right? Like, it's just A1 striking. Right? You do not beat hooks with anything else but straights. And Prates was longer than Lee, used it to his advantage. Lovely teeps, some nice high kicks, but it was the straight left, the straight right that really did the damage. And Lee couldn't get hold of him. Lee looks jerky and awkward for the first sort of minute and a half. And Prates just ran amok, right? Like, don't get me wrong, Lee had his moments, right? Lee hurt him. There was some moments and landed some big shots. He's a very tough man and all that sort of stuff. But it was obvious from the start that Lee was only going to choose to dive in with big hooks, and Prates had the number really early on. Great performance.
Yeah, really good performance. Who would you like to see him in there with next?
It's a good question. I don't know. Like, it depends where he lands. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
I'm just going to pull up the rankings here and have a very quick look. Like, stuff. It's tough because a lot of 70 is booked, but like, could we do? I know he's just lost, but could we do a Vicente Luque?
Yeah, might be
Could we do a
the
Randy
worst.
Brown?
Oh, I like that Randy Brown fight. It's two long gentlemen. Yeah, while it was impressive from Prates, like I think he does have his limitations too. I'd be interested to see how much of a run he makes in there. But I like that Randy Brown fight. Let's do that. Moving on to the prelims headliner, a little bit of unwarranted controversy really in this one, Harry. This was absolutely insane. I know you don't listen to the commentary, but there was plenty of confusion after the result of this fight where Walter Walker, Johnny Walker's brother, took home a submission win via heel hook over Junior Tafa in the very first round. Only 4 seconds left in the round when he got the verbal tap, which is when your opponent screams out in pain, the referee's job is to go in and stop the fight and call a halt to the fight. Much to the bemusement of Dominic Cruz, who went on to berate the referee here, who hadn't a clue what was going on. There was way too much confusion here in the booth for something that has happened before inside the octagon and something that shouldn't be really confusing at all, Harry.
It's in the rules. It's in the rules of mixed martial arts. It's in the rules of grappling, right? The whole idea is you shut your fucking mouth and you get on, right? Look, if something happens and you wheeze or you wince or whatever, that's fine. That's a natural bodily function. But when you scream out in pain, and I could see Tafa do it. Obviously, I didn't hear him do it, but when you see somebody wince and scream out in pain, that is a signal, and always has been a signal of a verbal tap. So, zero controversy from me here. The only thing about this fight I didn't like was the fact that Walter Walker sat back on a heel hook from top. That makes me so sad. It is unbelievable. I don't care that he got the finish. Sitting back on heel hooks is like 1998 MMA. Like, can we not do this, please? But sure, look, he got the win. I can't argue with him too much.
Indeed, he did. Moving on, Ricardo Ramos won a controversial split decision over Josh Culibao. Curious to hear what you think about this, obviously in the 145-pound division. In short, I think I'm not sure I agree with the decision here. I think Culibao did enough to get the nod here, but in the same vein, I believe he did absolutely throw this fight away against a guy who was basically fighting on one leg for the majority of the fight as well. So, he should have been going out there and getting the finish. And that's exactly why you should be always going out and chasing the finish and when your opponent is hurt and when he is visibly hurt and he falls down onto his back, Harry, I don't know. I just don't know why some fighters do it. Sometimes they just want to follow him down. They just want to kick the legs. Fucking make him stand up, make him fight on that leg, and then hurt it a little bit more. So look at obviously Ramos switched stances, and it was a little bit more difficult to attack that leg that he had hurt. But you know what you do in that case? I know you can give me the answer. You attack the other leg, and you take his base away from him altogether. So you know, Culibao he'll be sick after that one. He was sick, even though he probably still should have probably got the nod and on the judges' scorecards. You know, he can rue some of his own mistakes in this one, I think.
My main frustration was that exactly he didn't do enough.
Yeah.
Like you said, he probably did enough to get the nod. I don't think he did. Right, like he did. Right, it's fine. Right, I'm not arguing with you, but my point is, when you have a fighter that compromised, just keep fucking pushing. Right, ramp the gears up and make him sweat, and he didn't. And when you allow these things to happen, when you allow the fight to be as close as it was, right, and it wasn't that close, but the fight was close enough that you can make an argument for Ricardo Ramos, that's on you.
Absolutely, I agree. I would agree with that too. I don't think this should have been like it was a damn close fight. And I do believe, yeah, you know, it could have went either way. And I think we're both in the same opinion as like Culibao let this fight slip through his grasp, really.
100%. That's on him. And hopefully he will learn that next time when you have a guy hurt, you don't have to scream on him and jump on him and blow your gas tank. You've got 2 rounds, fella. Don't worry about it. Just take your time. Just take your time, but keep chopping away, right? Keep chopping away.
Indeed. Moving on, Casey O'Neill picked up a unanimous decision win over Luana Santos. A potential banana skin for Casey O'Neill. In my opinion, up the O'Neills. She looked very, very good here. She has looked the best that she has looked, in my opinion, on the feet. Sharpness, confidence, ever since she done her ACL. Look at, you know, and Graham even said it himself. Look at, he's had some recent knee problems there, not easy to bounce back from. But she looked like the old kind of Casey O'Neill in this fight, the one that was running amok before she got hurt in the women's 125-pound division, Harry.
Very, very impressed with Casey O'Neill. She had a little bit of everything in the fight. Some decent takedown defense, some decent get up, lovely, lovely striking on the feet. You're right, Luana Santos could have been a bit of a banana skin. She's not a bad fighter herself, a bit longer than Casey O'Neill, but O'Neill just looked great. Cardio was on point. Looked like she was cracking, looked like she was hitting hard, didn't look like the knee was bothering her at all, looked very confident in her body, which is a massive thing after something like that. Yeah, very, very good performance. Happy with it. Very,
yeah,
very
moving forward, Chris striking is what we knew and what we were impressed with so much in Casey O'Neill. And look at through the injury to me, you know, and a couple of fights that she has lost after the injury as well. This will be a huge big win for her. She seemed lethargic. She seemed a little bit stuck in the mud against Jennifer Maya and Ariane Lipski. But definitely looked a lot more sharper. And as you said, confident against Santos. And look, you know, Santos will be back as well. You know, she'll learn from that. She's still a good fighter. But I think that win will age a hell of a lot better for Casey O'Neill as Luana Santos's career does progress as well. Moving on, Harry, to Jack Jenkins, who took out Herbert Burns in the second round. I mean, same old really with Herbert Burns, Harry, isn't it? Really, it's
just shy.
Yeah, he's not a good nail whatsoever. As soon as the pressure builds upon him, he looks for a way out. But Jenkins was landing heavy with him. He landed some big shots. Obviously, Jenkins known for his heavy leg kicks, broken the legs of multiple opponents in the past. But, you know, Burns was looking for a way out and took a way out in the second round here.
Yeah, Herbert Burns has got half of a round in him. If he gets the fight down and he's dominant there, he can creep into the second round. But if it doesn't go his way really, really early, he's just garbage. Like, he's just proper garbage. And Jack Jenkins, I'm happy that he went out and looked and performed like he did, right? I think we have a really interesting fighter in Jack Jenkins at 145. You know, don't expect him to be in the upper echelon of the division or anything like that, but he's going to be fun, you know, for his length, the length of his UFC career. But yeah, so I was happy to see him go out and perform like that. He performed really, really well. He looked really good, but man, Herbert Burns is not a UFC level fighter. He's just not.
100%, couldn't agree more. Tom Nolan against Alex Reyes took place in the 155-pound division. Nolan, I thought, fought well on the outside, had some nice exchanges in the clinch as well. A good performance, but a performance, Harry, that will need to see some level of improvement from him as well.
Yeah, like I think it was a performance that he never got out of like the second and a half gear, right? He did just enough, never really looked in too much trouble. Nice back defense, had some nice wheel kicks, some really nice body shots, looked unpredictable at times in the second round, had some nice rhythm in the third with the body kicks, and had a bit of an anaconda attempt here and there, but it just never looked like he was like, cool, I'm gonna up the pace here and I'm gonna run over this guy. I'm not necessarily finish him or whatever, but I'm gonna make sure that this is absolutely without question. It was a good performance, it's a good fight, but you're right. We're gonna. There's probably more to see from Tom Nolan, which is a good criticism to have.
Definitely, 100%. Last two fights on the card, Song Kinan took on Ricky Glenn, won by unanimous decision in the welterweight division. A big hematoma. That was the highlight of this fight. Ricky Glenn had a huge hematoma over his right eye, or was it? Yeah, it was his right eye. Song Kinan took home that unanimous decision. Jesus Aguilar versus Stuart Nicoli opened up the fight at a catch weight of 127. Your thoughts on both of those fights, please, Harry?
Yeah, so Song versus Glenn was just a scrappy 3 rounds. Over and back, Song versus Glenn was fine. A couple of nice wrestling exchanges from Glenn. Song did some nice reversal. It was just a bit of that, really. Massive elbow from the top that opens up Glenn. Big hematoma at the end. It is what it is. Nicol and Aguilar was interesting for as long as it lasted. Nicol actually got a really, really, really interesting Kimura reversal from an Aguilar defense. Jumps on Aguilar's back. Aguilar does a great job of turning in. And when he escapes the back, jumps on a guillotine, and that's it. It's finished. Like, that is it. It is absolutely finished. Like, that was the fight. I think for Nicol, it's a shame, because that's his UFC debut, and you get to see some of the great elements of his game, in that he can jump on a back and he could do some reversal stuff and whatever. But it's very much a welcome to the UFC type job with a you're not safe ever. You know what I mean? So I think that's good. It's good for both guys, right? A good win for Aguilar, and equally, it's a good welcome for Nicol, where he had his moments. It's certainly not a blowout, and then we go from there.
Absolutely. We go from there, and where we go is to the end of the balance breakdown, the end of UFC 305. And this will be the last balance breakdown, it saddens me to say, for Harry Powell, who is going to be pursuing other things other than covering mixed martial arts cards, which he has been doing with me over the last couple of years. It's been a great pleasure to be able to sit down and break down fights with this man. I think we might talk about it a little bit more in the Sphere setup as well, even though he doesn't want to talk about it. But, in short, Harry gave me an opportunity on a podcast in the very early stages and helped me grow into and build a little bit of confidence in being able to express my opinion on fights and breaking down fights and analyzing fights. He's been an excellent colleague. Even more importantly, he's been a better friend to me through those couple of years, and that's going to continue for sure. And it's sad to see you go, Harry. Obviously, you're going to be pursuing other things. You're getting hot and heavy with the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, coaching and competing as well. And we wish you all the best at your future endeavors. Like I said, you will be back later on this week for the Sphere setup, but I had to mark this one as the last time that we will be together. Well, you never know what may happen down the line, but for the foreseeable future, the last time we'll be together for the balance breakdown, a name that you created and a name that I'm going to steal and continue and bring forth even without you over the next little while as well. The balance breakdown ain't going anywhere. We're just sadly losing Harry Powell.
Sure. Look, I'm not really too much for the words when it comes to this sort of stuff, but it's been a journey, right? Outside of the podcast, you and I had a quick chat about the numbers and when we first started and what we were doing. And, I went back and I watched the first episode that we had, which was actually just a straight sort of a podcast between you and I, let alone an MMA breakdown. And then the wheels just started to turn and the chemistry just sort of clicked immediately. And it was a year almost to the day that we did our first podcast that we ended up doing SevereMMA together, and sort of the rest is kind of history. But yeah, we'll maybe you'll force it out of me on the setup, but yeah, the grappling is starting to ramp up, and I'm getting to an age now where I have to choose what I do very, very carefully. And so unfortunately MMA is going to have to take a back seat. But you're right, we'll never say never, right? You may see me around SevereMMA here, there, and everywhere for the next little while. We'll see how it goes, but in terms of sort of every week churning out content, that's gonna have to take a back step. Yeah.
You will be missed, good sir. And I'm going to tell you here, you don't like talking about it. We are going to get a little bit more out of you in the Severe setup. We'll give you the send off you deserve. For now, hope you enjoyed the balance breakdown. Like I said, the breakdown will be here every week. It will be going through a little bit of structural change. We will let you know when we know exactly what's happening. But for now, thanks for listening. Take care, and we'll see you a little bit later on in the week for the Severe setup. The very last one, the last one that me and Harry will do together. Bring the tissues.